A woman wants a high-value guy. She wants a guy who is higher value in her eyes, at least. You know, she perceives the guy to be higher value than her. And for her, what that means in a guy is that he is assertive, he's dominant, he's edgy, he's brash, he's got options with lots of girls, and he's indifferent. A lot of these characteristics, there's a problem with it, because these are characteristics that create an asshole, right? So at the same time, the girl loves these characteristics because they demonstrate masculinity, they demonstrate a lot of confidence and authority and a lot of status and a lot of value in a man. But it's also the case that a lot of times the men who are the most assertive, who are the most dominant, who are the most edgy, who are the most indifferent, and who have the most options with women, they're socially proved, then those guys are the biggest dicks of the whole population. And so if a woman is looking and screening guys really, really hard on these criteria, and she's looking for the guy who maxes out each one of these stats, you might say. I almost think of it like an RPG game. Like a guy has stats, right? You've got assertiveness, dominance, edginess, indifference, social proof with other girls. And if you're maxed out on all of those, then man, you're gonna do really well with women. But with those characteristics also come certain drawbacks, certain character defects, you might say, which then come back to bite the woman in the ass. Except, it's interesting how this works, because here's how it works. A woman is at a bar, a nightclub, maybe she's in a cafe, guy comes to chat her up, right? If he comes in there and he's very weak, no assertiveness, no confidence, he's mumbling, he's shy, he's insecure, he doesn't have strong eye contact, he has bad body language, he's done. He's not getting anywhere with that girl. If a guy comes in there, he's witty, he's charismatic, he's very assertive, he instantly assumes rapport with that woman even though she's a total stranger. He just has the ability to assume complete rapport with her. He has the ability to get very physical very quickly with her. He has the ability to be edgy. He has the ability to be adventurous and brash. He's the ability to say whatever he feels like without giving a shit what she thinks or anybody else thinks. He's very icy, he's chill, he's almost carefree, like he doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care if he gets this girl or he doesn't, because he feels like he has so many options with other girls. He feels like he's very sexy, he feels very confident in himself, he loves the way he looks, he's very arrogant in himself, he thinks like he's the shit. That kind of guy, if he comes up to a girl, bar, club, cafe, wherever, she's gonna fall in love with him, like very, very quickly. It's scary how quickly this happens. But it just so happens that a lot of times the asshole is the one who is the most assertive, the most dominant, the most edgy, the most brash, the most indifferent, and he's also a player because when he's that way, he's got so many options with girls, he doesn't care about any particular girl. And what a girl is actually attracted to is that. Even though a girl is not attracted to a player per se, a girl is never going to be like, oh, you screwed 100 girls, so that's really sexy to me. No, a girl will never think that. But she's attracted to all these qualities: assertiveness, dominance, cockiness, edginess, and independence from outcome. Right? The guy, when he's talking to the girl, has to literally not care whether he gets her or not. If he goes in there with that kind of attitude, then his chances of getting her are exponentially higher than if he comes in there acting needy and desperate and really needing her for sex or love or companionship or whatever else. Well, what kind of guy is totally indifferent to whether he gets the girl or not? Is that a guy who has very little sexual experience or a guy who has enormous sexual experience? It's a guy who has enormous sexual experience. So even though a girl in her mind, logically, she's not going to say, yeah, I want a guy with lots and lots of sexual experience. In practice, that is what you're saying as a woman. If you're looking and screening guys very hard for these kind of very masculine characteristics. Because the way you develop those is by banging lots of girls. The guys that have those characteristics, they bang lots of girls because girls love them so much and it's so easy. It's ridiculously easy. And of course, the guys that don't have those characteristics, they're really struggling because they're not getting the girls, they're really struggling to find those kind of girls. So what happens is a girl meets this kind of guy, you know, who's alpha, who's masculine on all these various characteristics, and of course she's very attracted to him. She gets this emotional wave, and she just gets swept up in the emotions of it. Of course, he's got a killer attitude, he's got a killer instinct, so he knows how to do it. And of course, now she's in love with him. What is this? This is a chemical response. Of course, it doesn't feel like a chemical response, it feels like an emotional response. It feels like this is the perfect guy, he's amazing, my true love, I finally found him. That's what it feels like. And at this point, the girl, she doesn't really know this guy. She knows a little bit about him, but she doesn't really understand his full identity, his full personality. So what happens is that she gets emotionally attached. But see, the characteristics of this alpha guy that make him so attractive to the woman in the first place, those characteristics are also the exact same characteristics which create problems in one's life if they're out of balance. Not always, but it tends to be a double-edged sword. And so what happens is that it comes back to bite the woman in the ass a lot of times. So the woman, she gets emotionally attached. And in this relationship, she's running off the emotions. She's literally hooked to this guy like a drug. There's no logic going on here, right? There's no logic. I've coached a woman like this. In this kind of situation, logic is no good. We can talk for a month about how this guy is not right for you, how he's abusing you, or how he's not filling the criteria that you want for a man in your life. We can talk about all of that. You will agree, if you're the woman, you will agree to all of it, and then you still will not leave that guy. Won't do it. Why is this the case? Because you're running off emotions. And this chemical response, it's like a drug addiction. It's very hard. Just like a drug addict, you know that the drug is not good for you. You know that it's getting out of hand. You know that you should quit it, but you can't just because it's hard of the chemical addiction. It's not a logical thing. So this is why women will fall for an asshole, and then she'll stay stuck with that asshole for a long time. This can create codependent relationships, abusive relationships, toxic relationships, needless fighting in relationships, a lot of up and down drama, that kind of stuff. And see, this guy's bad character traits, they don't really become obvious until much later into the relationship. So something, for example, like being very assertive. A guy who's very assertive is the kind of guy, a lot of times, who has to not give a shit about what people think of him. Now, this can be a good thing in certain contexts, but this can also be a bad thing in certain contexts. And inevitably, it ends up backfiring on the woman, because actually, as the woman in the relationship, you want that deeper intimacy, and you actually want to communicate with your man, right? That communication is important to you. You want to be on the same wavelength. You want to be able to talk about intimate topics. You want him to be able to be receptive, to have that kind of back and forth. That's necessary for a successful, long-term, healthy relationship. You also want to be able to work out problems. If there's a problem between you, between him, you want to be able to sit down, talk that stuff out. Well, with a guy who doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks about him, does he care about that? Do you think he's more likely to sit down with you and listen to that kind of stuff than the stereotypical nice guy that you would never have sex with? No, right? A lot of times, these kind of guys, they just don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. And as the woman, you end up finding yourself in a situation where you really love this guy, and you're trying to do everything you can to make this relationship work, but there's certain things about what he's doing, or there's certain things you maybe want him to kind of tweak and change, or you need to talk to him about something, but you can't talk to him, because it's like talking to a fucking wall, right? It doesn't penetrate, because that's that double edge that you're dealing with here. On the one hand, it's very sexy. On the other hand, you're dealing with a stubborn mule. And over time, inevitably, these bad character traits, they start manifesting more and more. And really, if you want to maintain a long-term healthy relationships, it takes work. This is not something that you just kind of get involved in and then you expect it to go on and everything is beautiful. It takes lots and lots of work. Two people really have to choreograph and coordinate their movements long-term to make it work. Because honestly, what's going to happen is that the man will have flaws. The woman will also have flaws. If you want to keep it together, you both need to be working on your flaws simultaneously. You both need to be cool with it. You both need to have good communication between the two of you so that you're on the same wavelength. You can make that coordination happen. And also, you need to be growing in your relationship at kind of a similar pace so that one is not outgrowing the other and you're keeping a certain balance and equilibrium there. Well, that's really hard to do with a guy who's extremely assertive, dominant, independent, edgy and brash, and has options with tons of other girls. Hard to do it. So inevitably what happens is that you really fall hard as the woman, you fall hard for this guy. But then, because what you really want is you want that deep, intimate relationship, right? It's hard. There's a couple of problems here. One is that it's, first of all, hard to pin this guy down. It's hard to pin him down because a player has so many options, which invariably he does because he's got that personality that you got attracted to in the first place. But the second thing is that it's going to be hard to maintain that kind of equilibrium with this person, right? It's going to be hard to do that because his personality really isn't suited for that. You would be much better off with that nice guy, right? That caring nice guy who doesn't treat you like an asshole. You could actually maintain a pretty good relationship with him. The problem, though, is that you're not attracted to him. You want him logically, but in practice, when you meet a guy, you're not attracted to that kind of guy. So this is what happens. And there's another even additional aspect that makes this thing even worse, is that when you have an assertive, dominant individual in a relationship, what will almost always tend to happen is that person will start to abuse his power. This is not even something that he consciously does. This is something that has been proven through psychological studies. There's some classical studies that they did where literally what they do is they will take prison inmates and they'll create this kind of laboratory setting where they'll put a prison guard. They'll put one person in the role of the prison guard and they'll put another person in the role of the prisoner. And what tends to happen is that prison guard, because he has so much authority and control over the situation, that just over time, even if the prison guard is a good person, over time, he becomes more and more and more corrupt with that power, to the point where you start to get prisoner abuse. This is how prisoner abuse happens in various prisons, because the guards feel like they have so much power over the prisoners, they can literally do anything they want, and when nobody's watching them, that power gets abused. And really in this situation, logic is useless, because logically, it doesn't make sense that you're going to be with this guy. But that's not why you're with this guy in the first place. You're with him because of the emotions, the love that you're feeling, the attachment that's formed there. Especially if there's this codependency going on where you're very needy and he's not needy at all, then that's going to even worsen the situation even more. So just by listening to this stuff, if you're in that kind of relationship right now, or you've experienced those dynamics as a woman, then just hearing about it probably is not going to help you. Because what's happening now is that you're still running on those emotions of love, and we can talk about this for hour and hour and hour, and you're still not going to get it. It's not going to actually allow you to break it off. In practice, what I find is going to work is the following. You're going to be experiencing more and more and more pain as this relationship continues and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. It becomes more toxic. It's going to pain you more and more and more and more until what happens is that immense love that you have right now is going to get overtaken by the pain. And when that happens, there's going to be a shift, and at that point, you'll be able to break it off with this guy. But until that happens, you won't be able to break it off. And the sad thing is that it might take a long time for this to happen. It might take months, it might take years for this to happen. It might take a really, really long time. So if you have a lot of this chemical attachment, and right now your pain is down here, it's gonna have to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow a lot. And one of the dangers here is that really your life, as this pain is growing, time is passing, the clock is ticking, and your life is going further and further down the drain as this is happening. Especially if you're starting to get into physical abuse and verbal abuse and like really nasty kind of fights, that kind of stuff. So I don't know what to tell you because I'm a logical guy. I'm telling you logical stuff, but that's really what you need is you need an emotional trigger, because as a woman, you're responsive to emotions much more so than logic. And while you might understand all this, and you might even agree with everything I'm telling you, that still won't be enough. What's going to happen is that you have to get emotional leverage on yourself. Once you get that emotional leverage, then perhaps you can get the courage to break it off for good with this guy and never go back, so that then you can move on to a better phase, a better relationship in your life. And from this experience, maybe what you're going to learn is that you should be less focused on finding the most dominant, the most aggressive, the most edgy, the most indifferent, playerish kind of guy. You know, less of an asshole and go more for the nicer type of guy. Because even though up front, he now might be as sexy, this nice guy might not be as sexy as this alpha male guy. This alpha male guy, a lot of times it's really, really hard to keep him in a relationship. A lot of times he doesn't want to be in a relationship. A lot of times he won't listen to you, he won't coordinate with you, and it's just not going to get you to what you ultimately want in your life. Maybe. I mean, every girl is different, so every girl has different objectives, but I'm kind of, you know, generalizing here. So if you're fitting into the general trend, then this advice will work for you. So that's basically what's going on here. Another point that I'll make is that a lot of women, what I see them doing is they're backwards rationalizing their love. Especially at the beginning of the relationship, there's a backwards rationalization. So you fall in love with the guy, and then what tends to happen is you get these blind spots. Even your friends might be telling you, well, but look at this guy, like he has a problem here, he has a problem there, maybe he's, you know, he's doing bad at his job, maybe he's broke, maybe there's something else wrong with him. And you're not gonna see that because the chemical love that's there is just so great that it makes you blind to all those things. And in your mind, you tell yourself stuff like, he's the perfect guy, he's exactly the one that I wanted, he's so sexy, he's so amazing, you know, he loves me so much. But there is definitely this kind of blinding effect that's going on, and you gotta be careful about that. So these problems are out there, making you aware of them. I don't have all the answers here. I just kind of see that these are some of the kind of like the landmines that are out there for women. And I think that's a lot of what women tend to do is that when they're very young, in their early 20s, up through their mid 20s, what they do is they hook up with a lot of like really attractive kind of alpha male type of guys, because that's, you know, that's kind of the easy thing, and it seems like that's what's gonna work out. And a lot of girls will hook up with those types of guys, like the players, right? And they'll have a lot of fun with them, but they'll have a hard time locking those guys down. The relationships won't happen, or they'll happen, but they'll be very turbulent and unstable. And then what happens is that as the woman's biological clock is ticking more and more and more, so at that point, her priorities shift from, wait a minute, I don't really want the fun guy so much. I don't want the alpha male guy so much. What I really want is I want someone a little bit more stable that can really that can work with me in a relationship. And so at that point, her filters, I think, change, and she's screening a little bit more, and I think she's gonna be more tolerant of the nice guy type, because even though the alpha male is very sexy on the front end, it's the back end that a lot of women are really, you know, pursuing in relationships. And so this back end, you really need to have a kind of guy that you think will be able to manage that back end for a long time, right? Who's not just sexy on the front end. So I think that these are some of the characteristics and some of the details of why women fall for assholes. It is true. If you're an asshole, you have a much better chance of attracting a woman on the front. As far as keeping her, that's another story.